Hi, and welcome to Awkward Family Conversations, where we try to help millennials and Zoomers kind of figure out this thing called life. I'm here, as always, with my daughter, Addie, and her cat, Claire, our audio intern. Um, when Addie was in college, she went on a trip. She spent several weeks in Africa. She went there as an audio engineering major, interested in audio engineering, and came back an audio engineering major interested in wildlife conservation.
There was some time in between that.
I'm not sure if it was the giraffes, the elephants, or the lions, but at some point in there, you caught the animal conservation fever. So
It was the lions.
it changed the direction, the trajectory of your life.
I did. Mhm.
Hello, Ed.
Hey, Dad. I'm here as always with my father, Rhett, and somewhat related on the note of preferring animals to people. When my father was younger and in South America with his family, where they lived for a while, he was offered and really tried to accept the exchange for his younger sister, Susan, in exchange for 3 llamas and a sack of potatoes, which he thought at the time, and apparently still does, think is a great deal. Hi, Dad.
Well, you gotta give to get, but I mean, if you want 3 llamas and some potatoes, that's giving up your 5-year-old sister's not maybe a bad deal.
I would not trade Claire for any.
Sadly, I didn't. Sadly, I was not the decision maker there. My parents were. So they decided to forego the offer. The reason was Susan had white blonde hair back then. She was always a blonde, but then because she was in the sun so much and we were at altitude and living in Chile, it was just almost white hair, and so that was very enchanting to the indigenous people there, who were very interested in adding her to their family. So, So what are we talking about today, Ed?
Today we are talking about when should I volunteer at work?
When should you hold up your hand at work? Yeah, I've actually got some direct experience with this. I think this can be valuable my personal tale could add a lot of value here. So when have you had the opportunity yet to volunteer for things at work that are outside your normal scope of responsibilities?
Not like entirely on my own. I've had, suggested volunteer things of, will you specifically do this thing? That I've been like, sure.
That's not really volunteering. That's being asked to do something.
Yeah, but not something that I've necessarily been like, yeah, totally, I will definitely do that. I mean, on a larger scale, like on a daily basis, we have a radio system at work, and it's kind of like, hey, can someone help me with a blood draw in room 5? And I'm not doing anything, so I'm like, sure. But
yeah, that counts. I mean, if it's it's sort of choosing or volunteering to do work that's not being asked of you specifically. It's kind of like, yeah, let me hold up the hand.
But on a small scale, yes, but on a large scale, not really.
Well, and you're you're 22, so not a lot of opportunity out there.
Did you just forget how old I am?
Well, it's 22 or 20. See, it's the year is 23. You'd be 23 because you're born in 98, and so 2021. But we're not to August yet. So.
Yeah, my birthday has not happened yet this year.
Exactly. So I have to do the math a little bit, and I'm not good with numbers. So.
I know how old. That is a lie.
No, it actually isn't. I used to tell my finance team that when I start to do things and get a little big stuff, I'd be like, I'm not very good with numbers, and it always made them laugh. It was true, but it did make them laugh nonetheless. So, well, the good news. So I have. So I'll share my story of volunteering in a minute, but I will say that did 2 minutes of internet research this week on this topic. Was helped by time.com and Motley Fool, actually, investing website with a lot of interesting content, and they talked a little bit about when is a good time or when is not a good time to hold up your hand and volunteer at work. And really, there is no downside to volunteering because volunteering is voluntary. Nobody is expecting you to do it. So it's extra credit. And even if things don't work out, because it's extra credit, it's kind of like, well, I did it for the team and it didn't work out. you've got some you've got some play there that you can kind of, put it off, and it won't stick to you. A failure in something you volunteered for doesn't stick to you nearly as much as a failure of something where you're expected to do it. And so, there is no downside. I mean, if you fail several times, then yeah, there's a downside. But there's typically no downside. At best, it's kind of a neutral thing. It's like, oh, Addie picked up this thing that was extra and she didn't get it done, but it was extra, so we'll cut her some slack. If you do that several times, it starts to get like, oh, well, that's Addie. She always volunteers for stuff and never follows through. But first few times, it's there's really not a problem there. But having said that, volunteering creates tremendous opportunities for career path, and it's something that you definitely want to keep in mind as you're getting deeper into your career. Looking for opportunities to volunteer, but looking for the opportunities that get you the best return. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do all that, let's talk about how stuff gets done in an organization. So, Ed, how do you think anything gets done? Why does something happen in an organization?
Well, the communist part of me is like exploitation of resources and labor force.
Well,
However,
you can talk about exploitation or not, but just how does something get done? Anything.
It is done. The people do it.
People do it, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean? To do something, really, you need two things. You need the motivation to do it, and then you need the resources to do it. And if you have both of those things, it'll get done. And so anytime in any organization, typically in organizations, though, you have more things that you want to do than you have resources and I guess the time and attention and those things are all resources as well. But organizationally, when you do something, it's because people have decided we're motivated to do this. We want to do this. We're motivated to get it done, and we're going to put resources behind. So with that in mind, anytime you're looking at any kind of project, and relevant today as we're talking about volunteering, because these are typically opportunities that come up when they're outside, sort of normal resource allocation, normal decision things that come up. They're spur of the moment, or they're things that develop between planning cycles. But that happens on a regular basis. You really can't anticipate what they will be, what the particular opportunities will be, but that there will be some. And so, as you think about volunteering, we're going to come back to this a couple bit different times. You're going to want to focus on the opportunities that give you the best chance of success. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. And the framework for analyzing the best chance of success is to sort of see, okay, how much support, i.e., how much organizational motivation is there, and how much resource is available to be able to do the work. And if you have those two things, then you've got the things that you need to get something finished, to get something done, get something completed. And if you're leading the effort, if you're the one who's actually doing the work, then you'll get recognized for that extra piece. And so, at a very high level, that's kind of what we're going to delve deeper into it. But in essence, that's the way to kind of think about this. Is what's the organizational motivation, and what's the organizational commitment of resources to trying to get this done. So let's talk about why would you volunteer? Why should you volunteer at work, Ed? I mean, a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to go in, punch the clock, keep my head down, get through the day. So why would you raise your hand and say, yeah, give me more work?
For me, at least, one of the things that comes up, and especially on the small scale volunteering things, is the tech department at my job is very team oriented. So a lot of it is support for this kind of situation. Is I know that I'm going to need help probably in the next 5 minutes. So I'm going to volunteer and help a teammate, so they know that I'm there for them. They'll be there for me.
Yeah.
Been kind of my outlook on it for the last 10 or so ish months of working there. And it's been very effective.
Yeah, that's right. It's part of the culture. It's part of the, you want to help other people. You want to pitch in and do more because it's the culture. There's a culture of support and mutual support and help. Yeah, great reason to volunteer, just to kind of help other people out, help your colleagues, help your coworkers. And I mean, there's just the benefits you get from doing that, but also, like you said, you're going to need some help. And boy, wouldn't it be great if you've got some people who are saying, you know what, Addie's washing my hands, I'll wash hers. Let's do that. So peer support is a great reason to do that. I think the chance to do something different, can help accelerate career growth, especially, I mean, if you're particular and choosy enough with your volunteering, you can supplement the experiences that you're building out with your regular responsibilities and regular duties, with things that maybe fall outside that. And that can bring you up the learning curve faster, make you an expert, make you more expert, broaden your skill base and your knowledge base. And that can be very rewarding as well, as you build out your talents and your capabilities. It also sets you apart from other people in the organization, and we'll get to kind of the management view of this next, because it's an extension of this. As I said, there's an awful lot of people who just going to come in, punch the clock, keep their head down, get their paycheck, and leave at the end of the day. And if you raise your hand and you say, you know what, I'm willing to invest more time and energy, more of my personal resources into this organization, that's going to have an impact. And that's going to set you apart from people who aren't willing or not interested in doing that as well. And probably the benefit to volunteering, the greatest benefit, at least as it relates to your career path, is that it gives you the opportunity to do more. I mean, job satisfaction a lot comes from doing things, having discretion and making decisions. You're the one who's making the decision, and then your success or your failure is more directly related to your own contributions and your own efforts. And we spend a lot of times trying to build up those capabilities so that you can get to a point where you're taking on greater responsibilities. And, this is what promotions really are about, right? You go from one level to the next level, and that's a greater responsibility. And you have to handle more things, more complex things. And volunteering is a way to, as I said, accelerate your learning, which leads to greater rewards, both intrinsically and extrinsically. You're going to get more pay, you're going to get better, compensation, more vacation days, the more senior you are in the company. And you get to make more decisions, more complicated decisions. You get to handle more difficult, challenging tasks, which stretch you even further. And so if that's the goal of your career, you want to be fulfilled in your career by tackling more and more complex work as you go along. Volunteering is a great way to build those skills, build those capabilities, and put yourself in the good light of the people who are going to be making those decisions about who is going to get the opportunity to take those responsibilities, who is going to be the person that they're going to call on when you get these hairy situations that show up, or when there's a new product or a new service that you're looking at, or a new market to get into. The folks that are volunteering, when you volunteer, it demonstrates motivation, initiative, a willingness to invest your time and energy into an organization. And people who are leading those organizations will pay attention to people like that, because they're looking to ensure the success of the organization in total. And while it's no guarantee that somebody who raises their hand and says, hey, let me tackle this is going to be successful, it's an indicator that, hey, these are a couple of things that we want to see in our leaders, motivation and initiative. And it just makes the decision to promote you over somebody who's not demonstrating those things a little easier for them, because they have more confidence that you'll be the person that they need in that kind of role. So there's this perception on the part of leaders that you're also benefiting from when you volunteer. And that's a good reason to volunteer, because it helps you with your teammates. It helps you as a team get work done. set you apart from the people that are just looking to kind of come in and do a job as opposed to make a difference. It gives you a chance to expand your skills and knowledge and experience. And in the end, all of those things will add to your perception, the perception of you as a leader, as somebody who they want to, who the leaders of the firm want to invest in, because you're investing of yourself in their organization. So, and finally, it's a chance to make an impact kind of beyond the regular scope of your responsibilities. And again, if you're kind of a normal person who appreciates and gets satisfaction from seeing, from making a difference, when you can, hold up your hand and say, hey, let me try this. And, and you're successful, then you get to make that impact. So that's a great thing too. So let me tell you, well, maybe we should talk about, let's talk about when you should volunteer, and then I'll tell you my story of volunteering, because I think it ties a lot of these things together. Because I did have a opportunity fairly early in my career where I was able to volunteer and change the course of my career pretty significantly. And we can relate it once. I guess we've talked about kind of the framework here. We can come back and compare and see how my volunteer experience fit with this with this framework that we're talking about. So when do you think, Ed, you should volunteer at work? When is we talked about there's really no downside to volunteering, but there could, for some opportunities, there may not be any upside either. So how do you identify those upside opportunities? What do you think are the things that you want to be paying attention to when you're making the decision about, is this the work I want to raise my hand to do?
If I'm capable of doing it.
Oh, good. Yep. Yeah.
Like, not going to go volunteer to express a cat's anal glands.
Really?
Do that. So I'm not going to go do that.
Okay.
Yeah. When I'm like, also, I'm looking at I don't want to spoil the answer to your question, but one of the things that is on here that does actually factor in is when you have the energy and resources to devote to it. If I'm having a really bad day at work, or just a bad day in general, this last week has been kind of a rough personal one for me. So I've been less outgoing, willing to do all of the things, just because it's very taxing. So that's definitely a thing.
Yeah. You don't want to volunteer if you don't have the bandwidth to take on the extra work.
Yeah.
You won't succeed in that.
Yeah. Or even if you do succeed, you're just going to feel burnt out and destroyed when you're done, which is not a feeling that you should have after work. That's definitely is when I have the energy and the reserves for it, and also when I am capable of doing the thing is when I'm going to volunteer.
Yeah, I think there's some more there too. I mean, those are both very relevant, and actually, I mean, yes, things you need to consider is do I have the capabilities, and that's either the skills, the experience, knowledge, and I guess related to that, can you see a probable path to success? So, no decision is going to be risk-free, right? There's no guarantee when you say, okay, I'm going to do this, that even if you can see a path that's like, oh, this is a slam dunk, I'm going to be able to do it, there's still a chance that it may not work out. But if you can visualize a path to success, then that's something that's where you really want to say, okay, I can see how this can be successful. That's a good project to bet on. Be selective. You're not going to take every opportunity, and be analytical and actually take the time to think through, okay, is this opportunity really going to give me, how successful can I be if I take this on? Can I see a way through this to be successful? Because not every project you're going to have that, and not every, and as we just talked about, time and energy, kind of both of them limited resources. You don't want to spin your wheels. You don't want to invest time and energy, those resources, in something that doesn't have a very good probability of success, unless the reward is enormous. Again, no opportunity is risk-free. If you can see the successful outcome, then that's a good one to bet on. If the reward is enormous, even if the outcome isn't probable, it still may be worth doing, because if you are successful, I mean, if there's a 10% chance of success, because again, there's just like there's no guaranteed success, there's also no guaranteed failure out there. Even the worst looking project has some chance to turn out well. And if the reward is enormous, maybe it's, if you've got a 10% chance of success, but the reward is 2-level promotion jump, doubling of your compensation, et cetera, then maybe it's worth trying it, and see if you can make it a success. And when I say see a path to success, that doesn't mean every step of the way. You just know that, okay, well, if we handle these 3 issues, and I think in my mind I can handle those 3 issues in this way in general, then I can see a path for success. You don't have to, be able to lay out exactly how you're going to solve those things. But that if you can see a conceptual overview and identify those key things that need to happen, and you feel pretty confident that you can address those issues and get them resolved, then pull the trigger on it. Assuming you have enough time and energy and in reserve to be able to devote to this, because again, not all the time are you going to be excused from doing your regular work, and so you need to be able to say, okay, do I really have the energy in me to be able to make this work? We talked earlier about the motivation, the organizational motivation. What's the priority for this work to get done in the organization? The more support you have from the rest of the organization, and when I say support here, I just mean people saying, yes, that's something that needs to get done. The more people who say that, the better off you're going to be. So if you've got a path to success, you can see it, you're feeling like, yeah, I've got the resources within me to devote to this to make it successful, and I've got the organization is on board. Not everybody has to agree, but the more people that do agree that this is important work, it's kind of like, okay, if I get into trouble or if I need something, I might be able to get this help, get help to make this done. Then that's important too, and that can work. And it depends too who in the organization is speaking up about it. So, if your boss is, you're an entry-level employee, your boss is that next level, and this is something for your boss, and nobody else in the organization is saying anything about it, you may want to say, I don't know if that's really worth the time and energy. On the other hand, if you've got a vice president up there going, talking at team meetings like, oh, we need to set some time aside to tackle this issue. If somebody at that senior level is talking about it, then it's going to, you're going to have a lot more support, and that will be more attractive an opportunity than if it's just your own manager and nobody else talking about it. So how can you really tell whether the organization is really motivated to do it? Look at the resources that they're committing to it, right? If they're just giving you and saying, you know what, Addie, spend a couple hours a week on this and you'll be the only person working on it, that's not a lot of help. On the other hand, if they're like, Addie, if you want to take the lead on this, 25% of your time you can devote to it, go 10 hours a week. And if you need help, you can call on Bob, Sue, and Ted over there. And, they, as you need them, and they'll pitch in too. It's kind of like, okay, that's a different story, right? They're giving you time during the day and a sizable amount of your time to devote to it, and making other resources available to you. That's a pretty good indication that you've got organizational support around this project. So let me tell you about the the project that changed my life. I had come to San Francisco, in my late 20s, and I was working at the telephone company in the Yellow Pages directory publishing subsidiary. And we were reimagining Yellow Pages. It used to just be advertising. And we wanted to turn these, the company had been, and this was happening pre-internet. We're talking about turning the Yellow Pages into community resources, because these things are distributed to everybody in the, everybody who has a telephone, businesses and consumers. And so they were in every home and in every business. And so if you could put in community resources, whether those were, just kind of all the civic resources, tourist information. There was all kinds of things. So there was all this content in the front of the book. Well, that required a creative services department. You had to have somebody write the content. You had to have somebody design the content and the images that would go with the text. And then you had to have a production team that would prepare the pages that would go to the printer to be printed and included in the telephone book. And so, the first go at this, they hired a creative services company to do that work. And then I was in the marketing side, the product management side at Pacific Bell Directory, and we interfaced with that vendor. And when it came time to renegotiate that contract after 2 or 3 years, the vendor said, well, we're going to triple the rate because this is well seated, you're a public utility, you can pay it. And the leadership of my firm were like, I'm not sure we really want to do that. I don't think we want to spend that money on this creative services department. And so, it was going to go from something like $1.5 million to $4.5 million. Yeah, it was going to be a big deal. And so, and the contract was going to expire in like 90 days. So there wasn't a lot of time to kind of get this thing worked out. So, the senior leadership, the marketing leadership of the company said, what if we brought this in-house? And what would that mean? And so, and they started approaching product managers to kind of say, okay, would you take this in-house? Would you lead this project to take it in-house? And there were 3 product managers, and they all were like, no, I don't think so. And they came to me, and eventually they were going down the list about, well, who can we use to do this? And they came to me, and I was like, well, let me see. It's just taking an existing organization from external to internal. So we have all the functions already described. We have our editorial function, our design function, and our production functions already designed. We understand what those processes and procedures are. We have content that exists from prior stuff. We know the technology that we need. We need to have real estate. We need to have an office place for these folks to come to work, because that was back in the day when people actually did do that thing, go into the office for work. And it was just kind of like, well, I can see a path to success here. Now, it doesn't guarantee we're going to get there, but these are the decisions that need to be made. We got to find space. We've got to hire a bunch of people, and we've got we've got to provide technology and the things that we need, to be able to, so these people can do their work. And so I was kind of like, yeah, I can see a path to success. We had the support of senior management for sure. The resources were definitely there. I mean, we're talking about $4.5 million a year. If we came in under that, we would be better off. And so, so it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I do. I would like to take this on. It looks interesting and certainly impactful. Let's see if we can make it happen. And we did in 90 days. And I remember the vendor, the guy who was running the vendor, when we got it all finished, and he came over and looked, and he was like, I didn't think you guys could do this, but you did. So when you think about, when you go through the checklist, as we were talking about earlier, see a probable path to success. Yeah, I could see a probable path.
Give me one moment. Sure. Somebody's mowing their lawn right outside my window, so I'm going to go shut that.
All right, very good. You'll have to take this out of the dead time in the.
That made little to no difference. What? I said that made little to no difference, but.
Well, I can't hear it, so maybe it's not showing up.
Okay, that's good, because I was a little worried. Thought he was done since he did it 2 hours ago.
I thought you guys had wet grass. When you're getting flooded, so. Well,
we didn't get flooded. We just got tornadoed.
Fair point.
A couple miles south got flooded.
Anyway, so the checklist of volunteering. Can you see a path to success? I did. It was an opportunity that was going to pay dividends for us. It had senior management visibility, so we had a lot of senior management attention and a lot of organizational support, and the resources were significant. I mean, I started working immediately I had access to our real estate team. I had access to our HR team to start the hiring. I mean, we really had whatever we needed to do, and working with the technology providers. So, we were able to get it all done, and it was really the great project. Now, what that did for me was it put me on the radar as senior managers. This assistant project manager who was buried in this marketing organization along, there was probably 60 people in the marketing organization. Suddenly these guys, everybody knew me at that point. And the whole company wasn't a huge company. There was about 2,500 employees, and most of those employees were at the headquarters, probably half were at the headquarters. But I stood out because of that, the success of the project and the fact that I was willing to volunteer, and that we did, it was a really good job. And we were able to save the company tons of money. I mean, we went from, potentially looking at like $4.5 million a year, and that's not the right number, but it was significantly, it was orders of magnitude higher than what it had been, and we were doing it for cheaper than what had been there before. So, if it was 1.2 million, we were probably doing it for 800, 750,000, something like that. So, significant savings on the on the side, and I got a bonus for it, but more importantly, I got visibility and executives who were decision makers about when we have promotion opportunities, who gets them. And that led to a much higher profile for me, and led me to opportunities to manage the strategic planning and translating those strategic plans into market-based sales plans, and ultimately into campaign plans. And so made a big difference in my career fairly early on. I was probably 27, 28 years old when that opportunity happened. I'd been in the company just a couple of years, and it made a big difference. I was at the Pacific Bell director, I think, for 7 years total. And, the first year and a half were, just regular work, and then really kind of jumped me onto a different track there. So it was definitely worth doing. And, a good example of an opportunity that came along and made a difference in my life, certainly in my professional career. And but it had all the hallmarks of an opportunity that would be attractive, because success not guaranteed, but with enough support, organization behind it, a lot of people seeing the value of doing it successfully, a lot of resources devoted to it, and I could see a path to success. It worked for me. It was interesting that the other product managers, who had more to lose because they were more senior and they were more, their responsibilities were greater. Maybe they didn't have the internal resources that they needed at the time. I mean, at the time I wasn't married. I didn't, I had plenty of energy. I wasn't, pursuing other hobbies or anything else. So it was a good time in my career, and a good time, for that to happen for me. So let's talk about, when is volunteering inadvisable? What do you think? Yeah, when would you say, I'm going to pass? Here's an opportunity for me, even though there may not be a downside to it. I'm going to pass. What do you think?
When you're being exploited.
When you're being exploited, yeah.
As in, like, your manager is paid to do something,
mm-hmm.
and is asking you to do it for them.
Yeah.
Kind of a situation is, no, you probably shouldn't volunteer and do that, because that is not only outside of your purview, but it is them getting paid to do something that you're now doing.
Yeah.
That is a time.
That's, if it's a rare thing, if it's just a once in a while kind of thing, you might want to do it for teamwork and for support of your manager. But if it's a regular thing, yeah, absolutely. Be very wary.
So I would say no, regardless.
Well, yes. I mean, if they're asking you because they need a favor or something, but yeah, you don't want to take on a responsibility from somebody if it's their responsibility, and the expectation of the organization is that they're going to take care of it. There's the old saying.
I mean, like, I have written the schedule on the board for my boss when she is not at work, because she asks me to do it. Technically her job, I'm gonna do it. But if it's something like, can you make the schedule for this week? Probably not the time to volunteer. It's not your job.
Not your job. Yeah, I think that's true. You always want to be aware of, we talked about office politics, in past episodes, and those are certainly things to pay attention to. When people are trying to use organizational resources for their personal professional gain, definitely want to steer clear of things that'll put you sort of sideways to organizational goals and responsibilities. So yeah, let's make sure that there is organizational support, not just some dude who wants to, who wants an easy out or wants you to take on something because it's inconvenient or unpleasant, or, might come back and blow back on them. Now, again, there's really no downside if you take on a task or a project and it turns out that the project was, kind of a cowboy thing. You can always fall back on, hey, I was just helping out so and so, and so you might get splashed on a little bit, but because you're volunteering, that risk is fairly low. But you're right, you definitely want to pay attention to sort of the organizational dynamics and make sure that whatever you're volunteering supports the organizational objectives, not the individual objectives of a particular employee or manager. Yeah, I think, the other thing is success likely or unlikely. And again, with the caveat about what the reward is, if you're going to get a tremendous reward, then taking on a project that may not look like it has much of a chance of success still might make sense. But if success is unlikely, most of the time you're going to kind of say, yeah, pass, let somebody else take that on and see if they can make that work. If you've got a lot of things going on in your life, if you're just too distracted to be able to bring a consistent level of energy and focus and attention to the task, to the extra task, then no. Because again, that means success is going to be pretty unlikely. And if you're not getting the resources, I mean, you can say, oh yeah, I'll take this on. But again, if it's, well, Addie, you can work on this for 2 hours a week in your regular time, and then anytime over, and we're not giving you anybody else to help, that tells you that maybe the organization isn't fully behind this concept and this idea, and maybe you don't want to tackle that one. And I think that's, if you don't, again, we talked about the organizational support, how significant are the people who are talking about this need. If it's the president of the company talking about it, that's different than, a line manager, on the team across the hall who's looking for somebody to do something on a special project or a special thing that they're doing. It's kind of like, yeah, well, may want to pass on that if it doesn't have enough visibility, if it's not as much of a priority for the organization. So that's kind of the, I think that's that when you don't see when you don't see those things that are, that we talked about, that organizational support, the prioritization, if you don't have the energy and the time, skills to devote to it, if it's a long shot project, those are the times maybe to say, you know what, let me keep my powder dry and wait for an opportunity that's got a little bit more of these things in my favor before I
Also, as an add-on to the exploitation, that links into organizational support too. I mean, when I took on some overtime right before I got COVID, and my boss was mad when I didn't stay a full overtime day and instead just did half of a day on overtime. And that's when I stopped volunteering to do overtime, because I was like, oh, you don't appreciate this at all.
Yeah.
There was no organizational support of, thank you for coming in on your off day. Would you be okay staying an extra day? Oh, you won't? Okay, that's fine. Go home, take it easy. It was, why won't you stay an extra day? So I was like, you know what? This isn't appreciated. There's no support for me doing this overtime. I'm just gonna not anymore then. So
yeah,
there's a retroactive bit on organizational support as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the appreciation, certainly, I mean, assuming that, you have success in this project, you'll get some appreciation from the people, from the powers that be, the people who are interested in seeing this work done. But yeah, I guess the thing to think about too is, what's the blowback going to be if you don't volunteer? And is that really volunteering at that point? If the expectation is that, no, you're going to do this, that's not really volunteering. Even if it's outside your scope of responsibilities and they're telling you, no, you need to do this, that's not volunteering. Volunteering really is when you have the power to say yes or no to adding to your workload. And when do you want to say yes? When there's all the things we talked about, good chance of success, a lot of support, resources available. When do you want to say no? When those things aren't present, or if there are other things like you're talking about, where there's just a lack of appreciation for what you're doing, or just isn't. You're doing work for somebody else who should be doing it, those kind of things.
Which might be a time to find another job.
It might be time, yeah. If the organization is really full of that kind of stuff, if that's a regular thing that happens, that's not a healthy work environment. If personal goals are subsuming organizational goals, if people aren't all aligned around priorities, organizational priorities and things, then it's tough to be your fully actualized professional self in an environment like that.
Indeed.
Yep. Well, that's what we have today. No swearing yet again. No Venmo. No research items, I don't think.
I don't think so.
No, not very good. So what are we going to talk about next week then? And next week we'll be halfway through our season 3.
Ooh. Next week we are going to talk about how should I behave at business functions.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I can tell you about my first business trip. Not that I misbehaved. It was just I had no idea what to do, so I spent it in my hotel room for the most part. So, all right, we can talk about business functions. That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you can find us on awkwardfamilyconversations.com, on Twitter at awkwardfamilyc1. Haven't had a lot of audio intern content. She's been really minding her own business while I've been trying to work on our stuff.
Yeah.
Gotta tempt her back to my lap. You can find us on YouTube at Awkward Family Conversations for the video form of episodes, which includes many fun guest appearances by the audio intern. On Facebook at Awkward Family Conversations, and for all the links on Facebook also. And then on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen. And of course, Awkward Family Conversations, but you didn't see that one coming. Let us know what you think. Keep the questions and suggestions coming in DMs, comments, and of course, our personal phone numbers, because we ain't famous yet. And we'll be back next week. I love you, Dad.
I love you too, Ed. Have a good week.